My husband refuses to apologize for cheating on me. So, what would you like to discuss today? We'd been coming to these sessions for months. Ever since I found out Steven had been unfaithful, he'd insisted he'd do anything to make things right. I'd made it clear it was either marriage counseling or divorce. So, here we were. "This isn't working, Doc," my husband said. "It's been months, and it still feels like she's holding a grudge. And why shouldn't I?" I replied, shifting my purse on my lap. Was it my other husband who hooked up with some random woman while I was home with the kids? "Rebecca, I understand you're angry," Dr. Morgan intervened. "But let's keep things calm and rational. It's okay to feel hurt, but acting purely on emotion won't help us resolve this." "Tell me, Dr. Morgan," I said, my voice edged with sarcasm. "What's the solution to a cheating husband?" Steven interrupted. I said I was sorry. "How many times do I have to apologize?" I looked at him with disdain. "Once would be a start. That would require you actually admitting you did something wrong." "I've apologized plenty of times," he shot back. "Not really. I'm sorry if you're hurt, but maybe if you'd been around more. Or I'm sorry you're upset, but you just can't let things go." "Those aren't apologies, Steven. You've never once taken responsibility." Dr. Morgan turned to him. "Is that true, Steven?" Steven shrugged. "It wouldn't matter anyway. She's determined to stay angry." "Why do you think that is?" "How the hell should I know?" Steven exploded. "I pay the bills, I spend time with the kids. She's still mad. What more can I do?" Dr. Morgan looked over at me. "Rebecca, that's the question, isn't it? What do you need from Steven to move forward?" "I want respect," I said firmly. "I want to feel like a partner, not a maid or a nanny. I want to be listened to and valued, not dismissed as too emotional or unreasonable." Steven snorted. "Maybe if you started acting reasonably, I'd treat you that way." "That's not helpful, Steven," Dr. Morgan replied. "Well, it's not my job to help Doc. That's your job. And there it is," I said, exasperated. "He's never responsible for anything. It's always someone else's fault." "Oh, for God's sake." Steven threw his hands up. "What do you want from me?" "Anything. Just a real effort," I shouted. "You say you've tried it, but you couldn't even stop seeing her." Steven's face paled. "What?" "Oh, did you think I wouldn't notice?" I said, leaning in. "Remember that work errand the other night? I followed you, Steven. I saw you, with her." "That's insane. I haven't seen her in months." "Is that so? I wonder if she'd agree. Maybe we should ask her." With a chilling calm, I reached into my purse, pulled out a plastic bag, and placed it on the table. Inside was her severed head. "Go ahead, Steven. Talk to her. Maybe she'll be reasonable." Every year, my mother drugs me and my siblings to prevent the end of the world. "Sam." I woke to my brother's face, his eyes barely open. "Jet up." Since we turned 12, Mom had drugged us each year before the ritual, just to keep us from escaping. Last year, Jasper had barely made it, vomiting on the way up to the hot spring with his hands tied behind his back. This year, we had a plan. Jasper was already dressed, a backpack slung over his shoulder. His crown of tangled bones sat crooked on his curls, ash smeared across his cheeks. I ripped the crown off his head, then tore mine off too. Mom must have crowned us in our sleep. The crown had always felt like a symbol of something final. Until I was 12, I thought my crown was beautiful, that my sacrifice would be worth billions of lives. Then I watched as the 18-year-olds were sacrificed mercilessly. Instead of cheering with my parents, hands bound in silk ribbons, I dropped to my knees and threw up. The image never left my flesh dripping from bone. Skeletal screams. Jasper handed me my backpack, and we pulled Maddie from her bed. Maddie had a smaller chance of being chosen. Girls were meant to bear children for the ritual. But she wore a crown too, ash smudged across her cheeks. Jasper had a car ready, but before we could reach it, Missy Benson grabbed me from behind, her bony arms wrapping tightly around my waist. Jasper was yanked from the driver's seat, Maddie forced to her knees. "Devil children," Mrs. Benson hissed, dragging us back up the mountain to join the line of teenagers stumbling toward the hot spring. "Children of fire," the adults chanted as my mother forced the crown onto my head once more. Beads of red ran down my face, the jagged edges slicing into my skin. "Children of ash," they chanted, shoving me into the line. We were all tainted bodies wearing the ash-streaked skins of human children, waiting for her eruption. I collapsed just inches from the hot spring, my breath ragged. I'd seen the others boil alive. Skin melting, their screams echoing in my head. I didn't cry out when they lifted my brother by his hair and dumped him into the water. He vanished in a hiss of steam. Maddie screamed my name as strange men held her back. I was supposed to be next. I would be the 50 sacrifice, the one to save billions from Yellowstone's fury. Somehow, I crawled backward, choking on the reek of burning flesh, clawing my way down the mountain. I ran from my fate, leaving behind my brother and sister, whose steam still clung to my glasses. Sam Gallows, the 50th sacrifice, had escaped. The next morning was quiet. The lights in my hotel room were out. No room service. I sat up, brewed coffee, and burned it. Then I burned the bed. And finally the crown. I was free. Standing by the window, I watched as a thick layer of gray covered the ground below. A childlike thrill filled me, and I found myself smiling. It was snowing. I became the Grim Reaper, and the job's not as bad as it sounds. I never asked to become the Grim Reaper. It just happened. To be honest, I'm not even sure when or how. I used to be a regular guy. I had a beautiful girlfriend, Helena, a little black dog, and I was working toward a degree in religious studies. In my spare time, I worked as a landscaper. Life was busy with exams and assignments. I was drowning in stress. Then everything changed. Helena died. She took her own life. I was the one who found her, coming home from work that day. I remember kneeling beside her, my tears mixing with the blood staining her body. The red soaked into the black sleeves of my hoodie, turning them a rusty brown. I felt something leave me, some vital part of my soul. Then, as the emptiness set in, I understood what I had become. I reached for the scythe on my work belt, pulled my hood up, and took one last look at my beloved Helena. I carried her soul to the afterlife, watching as she drifted through the barrier, her face fading from view. And then, I went to work. I knew what I was meant to do. Most nights, I find myself in old folks' homes. I slip through windows and take them in their sleep. The elderly are easy to guide, but the babies, they're tough, to take them from their mother's arms. Sometimes it's as if the mothers can see me, almost make eye contact, their eyes brimming with rage, pleading silently for me to return their children. But I can't. They go to Helena, to that endless blue landscape of the afterlife. That's the most sick and twisted thing I've ever heard, Scott. The prison psychiatrist muttered, looking at me with open disgust. I glanced around his office, the walls sterile and white, with only the bright red of the panic alarms breaking the colorless monotony. He pressed record on a fresh tape. Patient 4518 Scott DeMorno. Patient exhibits signs of grandiose psychosis, identifying himself as death. This likely stems from the PTSD triggered by his first murder, Helena Grovely, who had recently expressed concerns to friends about DeMorno's increasingly strange behavior. He's now been charged with 19 counts of first-degree murder since her death, each one committed with a scythe. All bodies were recovered from a lake near his home, a place he refers to as the afterlife. Strange, the places this work takes me. I glanced at the pen on his desk, then at the pulse flickering in his neck. I never asked to become the Grim Reaper, but I suppose the job has its perks. 4 days ago, I was sentenced to negativity absorption duty. I've had 32 visits since then. You are a criminal, the judge proclaimed. The jury nodded in perfect unison. General straying is a crime. Another nod from the jury, faces smiling. And general straying has a punishment. Still the jury smiled and nodded. The punishment for general straying is N80. Negativity absorption duty. A lenient punishment for a lenient crime. And that's how I ended up here. Right now, a woman stands near my chair, inspecting the straps that bind me. Her smile barely lifts her cheeks. The doctor, however, keeps a permanent grin as he gestures to the extraction chair. She hesitates before sitting. This doesn't seem really ethical, she mutters. Ethics has been declared unethical. It does not legally exist. The doctor replies. Does it hurt? A pain is a negative trait, he says smoothly. As such, it will be removed. The dry scraping of Velcro fills the room as she's strapped in. This is for your glorious redemption, A2358, the doctor says, though his words are directed at me. I can't respond, not with my mouth soon shut. I can only listen, waiting for the soft, unsettling piff-piff of the disposable needles be inserted into her irises. It stings. Please sting, she whimpers. This is so your eyes don't dry up from the process. The doctor continues his work, carefully removing her pupils. I try not to think of what they must look like now. 2 black, hollow throats where her eyes should be. The screams in my mind nearly drown out the process. But I remind myself of its purpose. It was proven back in 2026 that the eyes are the doorways to the soul. The doctor connects us with a tube that links our throat eyes, and then I feel it. The flood of emotions, greed, guilt, gluttony, glumness, and so much more pour into my psyche like a tidal wave of intangible weight. They've removed most of the part of my brain that processes emotion, so I don't feel the brunt of it. Still, I'd like my eyelids back. After a few minutes, the tube is detached. The doctor takes her pupils from their container of water and carefully places them back into her eyes. She starts smiling. I am sinless, she says softly as if in awe. You are sinless, the doctor affirms. Return if you ever feel unhappy again. I want to tell the doctor. I don't know if my eyes are dry or if the sin has calcified them. But they never bothered putting the needles into my irises. No need when there won't be a chance to remove them. Besides, disposable needles are expensive. I poke my tongue uselessly against my sewn lips, wishing I could say anything. But there is a silver lining, I remind myself. I have until my soul is entirely converted to pure sin. Based on how I feel right now, I estimate I have only a few days left before I'm decommissioned. He's so good. I sit across from Amy, my therapist, feeling the weight of sleepless nights and an aching dread pressing on me. Lila was there all night? I mumble, she won't let me sleep. Amy nods with her familiar understanding expression, but then she says, as if changing the subject, "You're visiting Anthony later today, aren't you?" I swallow hard. I know, despite Amy's non-judgmental approach, she disapproves of my relationship with Anthony. Everyone does. He murdered your best friend. How can you? My own mother hasn't spoken to me in months. Nobody understands our love, not even Leela. I'm devastated that Anthony killed her, of course I am. But I shouldn't have told her about him, about us. Our love is sacred, something people like Leela and my mother just can't understand. It was my fault for trusting her. Leela never should have tried to come between us. Poor Anthony. He told me, and told everyone else. He was only trying to protect our relationship, to keep us together. And now Leela won't leave me alone. Amy's voice is soft but firm. Mary, I think we need to reaffirm that Lila's murder is absolutely not your fault. Once you accept that, maybe you're able to move on, and maybe she'll stop haunting you. I force a bitter smile. I thought you don't believe in ghosts. My beliefs don't matter here. The fact is, you're suffering because of Lila's presence in your life, even though she's gone. Murdered by your boyfriend. She doesn't say the words, but they hang there in the silence. A good step towards letting Leela rest would be for you to discontinue your relationship with Anthony. She says as she ends our session. My heart clenches. But she's right. No matter how much I love Anthony, Leela is haunting me, day and night. I can't eat, I can't sleep. She's with me all the time. If ending things with Anthony will make her go away, I have to at least try. I tell Anthony the next day, my eyes stinging with tears. I don't tell him about Leela. Why make him suffer more because of her? We sit across the rickety prison table, gripping each other's hands. He gently wipes my wet cheeks, his own eyes shining with emotion. Why? He asks, voice breaking. I have to come up with something. Amy, my therapist, she thinks I shouldn't keep visiting. Just for a little while, baby. Just until I can get my sleep under control. He smiles, soft and understanding. Amy, sounds like a real good therapist. She's right, it's not good for you, this place, he says, gesturing around the prison. My heart aches with love. He's so good. Any other man would be throwing a fit, blaming Amy for trying to keep us apart. But he just takes my hand again and strokes it gently. Sweetheart, one of my buddies in here. He's been looking for a good therapist for his mama. She's having bad sleep like you. Give me your therapist's contact, I'll tell him to pay her a visit. He's so good. Dear family, my darling son and blushing bride, another great day out with mommy, right Jack? Nothing new here. Daddy didn't get himself into trouble while you two were gone. I just wanted to write to let you and Jack know I'm thinking about you. Normally I'd just send a text, but the cell service is out and I thought this might be easier. It's really been a long day. Oh my darling Jack, I know you can't read yet, but mommy's gonna read this to you. Usually I tell you this in person, you know that, but to be safe I'm gonna text it to sweet Jack. Mommy and Daddy love you so. You'll do great things wherever you go. Even when I'm not around, I will still always be so proud. Geez, sounds morbid tonight. Chester and Eddie are both doing well. Always lying in the sun all day. Barely moved an inch. Must be hard to be a cat. Lately I'm just in the house. Glad the cats are here. Definitely glad that I'm not alone. Lunch was a slog without you guys. When I was a bachelor, I wonder how I even survived. Faster you guys get home, the better. Miss you both so much. Oh, and you're welcome to bring company over too. Regina, could you get groceries on the way home? We're totally out of cheddar now. Hope you both read this before you get home. Either way, I just really can't wait for you guys to get here. Unless you took 2 cars. Long as someone gets here soon, I don't care if Jack took the Mustang. He can have it. Praying this clears things up from my first letter, because you won't be the only one who sees this. I both so. My brother killed himself 2 days ago. I regret so many things. We saw each other again last August after 2 years of having no contact at all. He tried killing himself last May. His girlfriend found him then. They broke up a month ago and my brother was living with my parents again. He was ashamed of himself and depressed. I knew he wasn't feeling well. Why didn't I visit him every day the last weeks? Why didn't I hug him every time I saw him? Last week he hugged me, told me he loves me, and that I shouldn't worry. In his letter, he told me he was saying goodbye to me at that moment. Show your loved ones you care about them. You never know if it's the last time you'll see them. The unexpected gift of kindness. I was at the grocery store the other day, struggling with my shopping cart full of items. I was feeling a little off, like I had too much on my plate lately. As I approached the checkout line, the person in front of me turned around and smiled. They waved a hand toward my cart and said, "Hey, I'll cover your groceries today." I was so caught off guard, I almost didn't believe them. But they insisted, and I couldn't refuse. After they paid, they just wished me a nice day and walked away without expecting anything in return. That simple act of kindness stuck with me. It felt like the universe had sent me a little reminder to keep going, no matter how tough things seem. It wasn't a huge gesture, but it made my day. Sometimes kindness comes from the most unexpected places.